Hello, you are listening to the Natural Healing Show for UK Health Radio. I'm your host, Catherine Carrigan, medical intuitive healer and Amazon #1 bestselling author. You can find out more about me and my work at catherinecarrigan.com and unlimitedenergynow.com. While you're there, definitely sign up for my newsletter so you can learn even more about how you can heal yourself naturally. Now, our guest today is Johnathan Goldman. Johnathan Goldman is the author of the new book, The Gift of the Body, a multidimensional guide to energy, anatomy, grounded spirituality, and living through the heart. He's the founder of the Essential Light Institute, and you can find out more about Johnathan Goldman and his wonderful work at his website, essentiallight.org. Welcome, Johnathan Goldman.
Nice to be here. Thanks for having me.
So, Johnathan Goldman, for our audience, what exactly is the human energy field?
People have different names for what underlies what we usually think of as our body, right? We think of this limited, dense thing that I walk around in as our body, but actually our body is many layers and actually is an expanded field. It's an egg within which one layer is our physical body. There are layers of that, each one slightly different vibrationally and with a slightly different purpose that make us what we then call us. So I call it the human energy vehicle because my experience is that's what it is. I was given a vehicle. It's a rental for a period of time. And I travel around this earth, this life in this vehicle, gathering experience, gathering information for my own evolution and to do what I came here to do.
Great explanation. I love that. And, you know, when I'm describing this to my clients in my work as a medical intuitive healer, one of the things that I explain is that there's a law of physics that anytime there's a vertical electrical field, and if you're standing, you're probably vertical, and anytime there's a vertical electrical current, there's a magnetic field perpendicular to that. So, and people call that your human energy field. New Agey people call that your aura, right? Are there other names for it, Johnathan Goldman, that our audience may recognize?
Some people call it, in the more esoteric world, they call it the etheric double. It's also a term that's used. And look, I studied all that, but really what I learned came from my own intuition. And then later I would check it out and I'd be like, oh, that's what they call it. Mm-hmm. And because I didn't want to be prejudiced. I mean, when I started doing this work, I didn't know what an energy field was. I didn't know what a chakra was. I've used that term because it's the most common term, and it's also giving honor to the people who knew this thousands of years ago. But I didn't know what any of that was. I just was led, as I would say, by intuition, and also what I came to understand was what I call in my book, those guys who were maneuvering me and manipulating me, teaching me. And then, as I said, later I would read a book and be like, oh, I see, that's what they call it. So really what I've learned came from that, came from intuition and experience, came from having my spiritual channel, my own healing channel, really, I would say, blown open in Brazil, in the mountains of Brazil.
Now, many different healers from different traditions have described the energy field. Yogis have described the energy field. Tai Chi, Qigong masters have described the energy field. Reiki masters have described the energy field. Is it possible, Johnathan Goldman, in your opinion, to see the human energy field, or are there instruments that have mapped this energy field?
Well, it's certainly possible to see it. Here's the thing, right? We have our five senses. Then we have underneath those, we have our non-physical senses. And each person actually in that array, right? Seeing, hearing, feeling, sensing, intuiting, has a different arrangement, right? Some people are more this or more that. So there are those that actually do see it. My way always has been more through feeling and intuiting. My seeing has lagged behind, so to speak, on purpose. I came to understand because I needed to feel. There are instruments now that can measure somewhat, right? Where science and spiritual science are going like this. They're heading toward each other from different angles. So what has been known for thousands of years by intuitives and people who can see and people who then train themselves to do it, science is starting to map in some ways, right? I think that's useful because then the people who need that reference can understand that we're not talking about woo-woo stuff here. We're talking about real things. We're talking about what is,
Yes.
right? We've limited in our culture, our vision and our parameters, like I'm doing now. We've limited to this, right? So science is going from this out. What spiritual science does is go from the bigger picture in.
So Johnathan Goldman, author of The Gift of the Body, how the average energy field for the average person, how big is it, and what's the diameter? So we're giving our audience a sense of how big the human energy field generally is.
It's a great question. Here's the truth. It changes, right? So I used to live in Boston, right? I'd ride the subway. Ride the subway at rush hour, which of course you can do now, but ride the subway and literally you're touching someone's body, but you're not touching them. Why? Because everybody shrinks their field down. Then you get in a place like this, like you and I are talking and we feel good and we're having, and then literally our field gets bigger. Gets bigger because one layer of the body, I call it the emotional body, is very flexible. It can grow and it can shrink depending on those kinds of conditions and depending on how safe I feel, how expansive I feel, how well I feel, right? The other layers are more static. They can a little bit, but the emotional body actually can get quite big and right. So we actually use word. We say they felt very expansive. I felt expansive. I felt open.
Such as when we're on a mountaintop or when we're walking on the beach. Those are times when our field can really expand.
Like that. Or you're with somebody, you're in love, right? I felt like I was the whole world. Well, because you've expanded yourself so much that you actually are encompassing way more of reality.
So Johnathan Goldman, author of The Gift of the Body, for our audience, can you explain what are the layers of our energy field?
So, right, the most common way is to understand like an onion, but actually a better way is to look at the horizon of the earth, right? The macrocosm and the microcosm are fundamentally the same, right? This is my little world. My bodies are my little world. So the horizon, if you look at particularly like at sunset or dawn, you can see different layers, right? It looks different. There's a band surrounding the earth. Then there's a bigger one that goes like this, and the layers of the sky. We have the same thing. It's just that actually you referred to it at the beginning. We have a vertical dimension, I call it the core. Other people call it the vibrating center that goes through us from top to bottom. It's made up of energy that comes from heaven and comes from earth. It's a braid that forms a single vibrating core, right? Around that then are layers, succeeding layers is the best way to say it. And each one of them is connected to that core, but each one of them has a slightly different density. So your bones are very dense. The physical body has its integrity. Of course, it's also just made up of molecules, and really it's all space, but it's a much denser field. Then around it is what's called the etheric body. The etheric body, for instance, is acupuncture points and acupuncture meridians, and many of the things that you refer to, Reiki, for instance, craniosacral work within the etheric body, because the etheric body is a bridge between the physical body and then the more refined bodies. So lots of healing work can be done, preventive healing work. I was an acupuncturist. I am an acupuncturist. I've been practicing acupuncture for 44 years, 45 years now. So the miracles of these, what we call alternative, they're not alternative because they're ancient therapies, work in the etheric body. Then above that, it goes like this. Then above that is what I refer to as the emotional body. I call it the emotional body because it has to do with motion, E/motion, energy in motion. It's what is responsible for feeling alive, feeling good, feeling dense and heavy. Many people who are ill describe themselves. I feel dense. I feel like I'm carrying a weight. I can't move. I feel, I'm right. When I was 24 years old, I felt like I was 90. Now I'm 70. I feel like I'm 40. So that's the emotional body, and it contains emotions, but it has motion. It's like, and it's referring back to the original thing. It's like looking at the sky and seeing the clouds. So the clouds can be moving and beautiful, and the clouds can be dense, ready to rain. Same thing in your body. The emotional body can be dense and full of rain, can be full of repressed emotion, can be full of energies that you pick up that are not yours. Right? Many people are suffering from this. Then there's the mental body. The mental body is like the membrane, or like the Van Allen belt around the earth, or like the membrane of a cell. It's what defines us, right? Called the mental body, because what it contains actually are the thought forms of belief and opinion. What defines us really in this world is our beliefs. And they don't live in our brain. They live in the mental body. So the belief of who you are in this life lives in the mental body of your third chakra. The belief as to what love is for you lives in the mental body of your heart. This is true. This is not, again, this is not woo-woo. This is what I was shown. Right? Then above that, even out beyond that, are the spiritual bodies, which means spiritual bodies contain the program, the karmic program, the pre-life program for what is going to be stimulated in this life to make you learn, give you the opportunity to learn what you came to learn in this life. Also, that link us to other realities, right? When we meditate deeply and we go inside here, then we go through the spiritual body to connect to these transpersonal spiritual forces and spiritual, even spiritual dimensions, other simultaneous dimensions that live. That's a whole nother conversation.
So wonderful explanation of the 5 layers of the field. And in my 28 years of experience in natural healing, when I do a medical intuitive reading, I read what I refer to as the 5 bodies, like you talked about: the physical, the energetic, the emotional, the mental, and the spiritual. And for our audience, I think it's important to understand that dis-ease or illness begins in the field and it actually comes in.
Exactly
And
right.
yes, and John, so we're all in agreement, those who understand. And when we want to heal, you have to push it out of the physical, through the energy field, through the emotions, through the mind and the soul. And as Johnathan Goldman says, the emotional body can shut down literally any process on any level. So it's really important and really critical that when you do healing work, that you include some sort of component where you're addressing what's happening on the energy with the emotions. The other thing, and you were talking about this vertical current, there's many names for that. Yogis call this your sushumna. It's also referred to as your hara line. And when energy comes into the body, it comes through the point on the top crown of your head, your ba way. Acupuncturists refer to it as your ba way. So through this vertical current, and then this vertical current, that hara line to Shumna feeds the chakras. The chakras feed the acupuncture meridians. The meridians feed the organs, and the organs feed the muscles. So whenever you have pain or disease in your body, I'm going to look at, as a medical intuitive, where did things get mixed up? Because you have to go back through this flow of energy, and many people are not familiar with the flow of energy. So it's not just a pain in your calf or a pain in your neck. It's like it's happening on all these levels. Do you have any observations about that, Johnathan Goldman?
I mean, your explanation is very beautiful. I would, if with permission, I'd have two things. One, my work is to exactly what you said, is to identify where is the place in the field, in that expanded field, where, as you said, things got off, that the pattern got locked in, that over time created eventually what people are experiencing as symptoms. But at some point, the harmony, right, everything works on harmony. One way to define health is simply harmonious movement. And a way to feel how health is disharmonious stuckness. It's really simple, right? Almost all illness is caused by something being stuck somewhere. So my work is using what I call what I came to call the chakra map, is to identify specifically in which layer, in which chakra, the original glitch was put in, usually from some trauma, usually from a decision that got made early in the person's life, because, for instance, my love was not received, right? The worst thing we do to children is not let them love us, right? So my love was not received. It wasn't safe. What I did was I withdrew a portion of my heart's energy, because a heart left to its own will just do what a heart does. It will love and love and love and love. Well, it wasn't received. So I had to pull it back. Where do I pull it back to? Literally, I pull it behind my heart and I put it in a lockbox, waiting for, probably, unfortunately for most of us, for me to get sick enough or upset enough or something happens. And I can't, my body is saying, you have to, release it. So my work, and is a version also of what you do, is to find where that original lockbox is, and then through energetic methods, unlock it and release into the field that energy which was held back in most cases, right? What I tell people all the time is there's nothing missing. You're not missing anything. You just put it somewhere. Let's find out where it is and get it back, and then reharmonize everything. That was number one. Number two, very briefly, what I want to say is this, in relation to the central core, one of the main things that I see that people need to work on is grounding, right? The first stage. So I teach something called the 3 groundings, all right? Grounded on earth, centered in the heart, receiving light. So many people have an ambivalent relationship with incarnation, right? I did. I was like, when's my prison sentence up? When can I meet with the parole board? I don't have that anymore. But that ambivalence keeps us walking on eggshells. And so many people need to embrace energetically the fact that we're here to be here.
I love that message. And I so agree. And I tell everybody, you've got to ground before you can ascend.
Exactly. I completely agree with you.
Yeah. I worked with somebody just recently, and his problem was that he had literally completely disconnected from his physical body. He was suicidal, experiencing, great amount of psychosis. So grounding. And can you go through for our audience, these 3 levels of grounding? How do we go about these 3 levels of grounding?
So first, let me say I'm going to give just a little pitch here. On our the website essentiallight.org, we now have a 10-session series that I did live on Zoom in September, October, November, that actually takes people literally through these stages. What I had to work for years to ground myself. I did bioenergetic therapy really, really strong. So that was the first discovery, this thing that we're talking about it's necessary to come into your body. So that involves, none of this is fancy. It's simple, but it's very profound when we do it. What we're doing is building an internal energetic structure that will allow us to relax, allow us to then, in the end, receive light, literally vibrating universal light into this vehicle. And it's what people call illumination or awakening, right? So we build the structure. The first thing is grounding. Like you're going to build a building, you got to build the foundation. Foundation has to do with putting your feet on the ground, has to do with your first chakra, through meditation and imaging and feeling it, like drilling your first chakra into the ground. So what I tell people is somehow you have to go to nature. You have to get in literal relation with nature. If you live in a city, you got to find a patch of earth. You got to go to a park. You have to, right? If you're lucky enough, like I am, to live in the country, right? You go to the mountain, you breathe in that, ground yourself. Second thing then is activating the core that we're talking about, right? The Sushumna. And then entering into literal, not metaphorical, relationship with the center of your chest, with your heart and your heart chakra, which then extends out the front and up the back. So through meditation, through breathing, through crying, through, opening, becoming centered in the space of the heart. And then here's the other thing that I was shown. Everybody, every human has built into us, I'm going to turn sideways and show you, a chimney, a spiritual channel that goes from here and here, goes like this, and goes up to the edge of the aura. I call it the channel. It's an open, it's a channel, it's a discharge channel that energy we were talking about in the excess in the emotional body can be taken up, let go of. You can also send it to the earth. And then it is a tube for light to come into and fill up your egg, fill up your jar with light. So what I teach then is these 3 stages. And people are different. Some people are like, the heart thing is no big deal, but the grounding thing is difficult, and etc. But once those things are open, and then it's a work. This is not like, I grew up in Detroit. We used to say, vote for me and I'll set you free. No, this is not vote for me and I'll set you free. This is like, here's a work. You can do it. Everybody can do it. And it takes work. I've been doing this work for 25 years. I do it every day. I sit in my meditation and I do the 3 groundings. So anyway, that's a short version.
Johnathan Goldman, how does our life experience affect the human energy field? So as you mentioned, this energy field that is what we sense when we sense each other, when we sense, we'll say, he or she has good energy or bad vibes. So how does our life experience affect our energy field?
We imagine in this culture, right? In the culture I live in the United States, we imagine that we are these individual, like our whole trip is about the right individual. And then the more recent, more new age stuff, and like be your most magnificent self, as if your self is separate from other selves, right? And we're not. We are in constant connection, just energetic connection with where we are with other people. The whole universe is connected by electromagnetism. We are too. We're connected by electromagnetism, and then spiritual energy rides on electromagnetism. So we are constantly, our life experience is us.
Yeah, a good analogy for our audience, if you think of going to the beach and looking at the ocean, and you see a little wave, and then there's another little wave, and it's all part of the ocean. So
yeah, and we are those, and so, you know, let's keep with the analogy. Here comes a storm, right? We're in this moment on Earth is pretty much a storm, right? So many people are being affected, and imagining, we need to understand, because of that, we are all affected by everything that's going on. Some of us more acutely than others. And so you referred earlier, you know, to the guy who was very depressed and suicidal, right? Many people at this point, right? More than it's unfortunate that usually there's a bunch, but this is way more, because the external paradigm has been disrupted. And our natural sensitivity that we usually mitigate by all the things we do, by being busy and working and right, and all these things, we can't do that anymore. And so our natural sensitivity, that connection of the waves, or all the waves, is being shown even more. And many people don't know how to navigate it and are feeling overwhelmed, because I'm feeling everybody's fear. I'm feeling everybody's despair. Right? So we are very connected. And that thing I referred to as, you know, the glitch, that's our life experience, right? So I've been living, so to speak, twisted up by that early experience. And I walk through life, and that's what my life is. My life is a twisted up life. So what your work, and I hope that my work does, is help people straighten out, come into alignment with their center. In my work, doing these 3 groundings, that creates a neutral vibratory space for that stuff to work out.
beautiful explanation. Now, Johnathan Goldman, when we become exhausted, you know, people will say, I don't have any energy. So when we become exhausted, what exactly happens to our human energy field?
Well, mostly what happens is we don't renew ourselves. We don't know how to renew ourselves. And so that idea that I'm isolated, okay, I'll give you a specific example. So the idea that I have to do it myself, there's nobody to help me, right? That idea, like, I know it's up to me, I have to work. That idea lives in the mental body in the back of the 3rd chakra. And that idea constricts me. I don't ask for help. You're connected to the UK. They say in England, you spend your penny, right? I spend my penny, and I don't get a new penny because I don't know how to, right? And then on that, in what I do in order to then, you know, keep going, doing is do things which aren't good for me, you know, drink lots of coffee and addictions and blah, 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 and food and all kinds of things and thoughts, and spend hours and hours now watching Netflix. And so I think that that's mainly that thing. And referring to the earlier conversation, the lack of grounding, right? Where do I get energy from? Really, I get it from the earth, and I get it from the cosmos. So I shut myself off. If I shut my chimney off, I'm not getting nothing from the cosmos. And I pull my 1st chakra up, I'm squeezed. And then what I have, I expand. That's my explanation. The other thing is, referring earlier, many of us get confused between the energies of empathy and compassion. So empathy is the ability to link with someone else's energy field, right? It's a way to get information, right? So in your work, in my work, we enter, we feel, look around, you know, I'm right. We look around, feel around, intuit around. Blah, blah, blah. Then what I do is I withdraw, come back, and I sit in the space of compassion, which is a universal space of neutrality. So empathy gives me information, but the way I work is not through empathy, because empathy, right? There's sympathy, empathy, compassion. Sympathy says, I'm going to do it for you. Empathy says, I'm going to do it with you. Compassion says, I'm going to hold the space of total presence so you can do it yourself. And I know you can.
Beautiful explanation. Love that. Love that. Wonderful distinction. Now, Johnathan Goldman, you talk about the etheric body, and that's a term that's confusing to many in our audience. What exactly is our etheric body?
So I use etheric in that sense that I referred to, of when you refer to the acupuncture points, and I refer to that as the first layer that interpenetrates the physical body. It's a narrow layer. Most people, for instance, who start to see auras, you see, or if you see someone really backlit. I remember when I was young, I saw a video of the Beatles, and they were backlit, and Paul McCartney had this like aura around him, and I thought, wow, that's cool, right? So his etheric body was being illuminated. You know, he looked pretty good. I thought that was good. That's what I call the etheric body. As I said, some people call the whole thing the etheric body, the etheric double. Etheric means energetic, interacting with the physical,
Yeah.
right?
I
So,
agree with you. And my experience is the etheric body generally extends about 3 inches from the physical.
like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, somewhere
And,
in there.
and it
Beautiful.
includes your acupuncture system, which Johnathan Goldman works on, your chakras, and also your breath. So your breath is, yeah. So, and your breath can regulate this etheric body. Now, Johnathan
Like
Goldman,
that.
how, in your experience, how does trauma affect the human energy field?
Human trauma, right? There are many ways to talk about trauma. If we're talking about energetically, it is trauma freezes the energy field in certain places, right? Trauma is a freezing. Trauma is that moment of trauma, or that time of trauma, or that incident of trauma is still present. I'm not here now, I'm there. And energetically, what that does is it freezes somewhere in the field. And that it's like, even think of it this way, like an ice flow, right? So you have a river, and there's an ice flow. What does the river have to do? It has to go around it. And so it changes the nature of the river, or changes the flow of the river. Same in our energy bodies. When there's a traumatic incident, a traumatic memory that froze us in that time, it's somewhere, and our whole energy system has to work around it because it's not open and flowing. So the identification, referring to what you were saying before, the identification of not just of what it is, but where it is, right, then allows the beginning of melting it. And it depends on the person, depends on how ready they are, depends on the other work they've done. I was working with someone last week, and the center of what's going on is a particular trauma that this person, she's 72 years old, she's very successful in her life, and really she's come to this time, as many people do, where she's reviewing and realizing she has lots of things to heal. So the trauma for her, we went through it, was this thing of holding her heart back. But in the session I did with her, that wasn't what we did. What had to happen was she had to get calm. First step, she had to get calm, because she wasn't going to allow any of the melting until she could feel a little more secure. So the whole session was to just infuse her whole aura, her whole field with calm. And she said, oh, wow, it went up my arms. Whew, I'm okay. Okay. So next session, now let's get down to melting this trauma place. See?
Yeah, I agree that we have to proceed from a place of safety. So if you don't feel safe, then you're going to be in a state of freeze and contraction and survival mode. So no healing can happen until you do feel safe.
I agree.
Now, Johnathan Goldman, so many in our audience here at the Natural Healing Show, we're aware that we have to eat well to take care of our body or exercise. how can we build and maintain a healthy energy body? What are some of the practices that help us to do that?
Well, you referred to breathing. I thought your tying breathing into the etheric body was, I like it very much. That breathing, many layers, right? We are many layers. We need to tend to all of them, right? From the most inner to the most outer. So the basis for me is finding the place in me that my guide calls the refuge, the place deep in my heart, literally underneath. He says, underneath the underneath the underneath. That place. I start from there. What that does is frees up my intuition. So all those other things, what am I going to eat? What exercise am I going to do? What am I going to put in my body? What am I going to say out of my mouth? All of that is guided best by intuition. Intuition is the voice of the heart. So that in freeing that intuitive sense, freeing it and nurturing it, right? Following little ways first. You open the refrigerator and you breathe in your heart and you say, okay, what am I going to eat? Probably it's not a monumental decision. Before you decide that you're going to, move to Iowa, right? Because you read a book about Iowa. Breathe, do that. Then each person is slightly different. It's one of the problems with generic, everybody should eat this. No, not everybody. Everybody's a little bit different. So there are many beautiful systems. Particularly, one of the things that I have benefited from is Ayurveda. Ayurveda is an ancient Indian system, right? 5,000-year-old healing system. But I've done many things because this is my moment to do it. And so that's actually my grounded intuition is the guide to all this from my point of view. And people who heal, I'm sure you know this in your work, the people who really heal are the people who follow their intuition. Because you get a serious illness and you have 1,000 ideas. People are telling you this, particularly, right? Someone gets cancer, for instance. Millions, people, this and this and this and this and this. What are you going to do? You have to have your intuition. You have to have that place of refuge from which to say, okay, what am I going to do? What's in the highest good for me?
And that's because we're biochemically unique. And which brings us to my next question is, people like you and I are both nice people, but we have different energy. Can you explain for our audience how everyone's energy field is a little bit different?
Yeah, we are, right. The basis is generic, right? Your body, my dog's body, a fish body, the tree body. We're all basically, right, came from the same, what do you call it, model, right? I have this image of like, the cosmic artists and scientists, they were in their little lab and they were like, they think, hey, we're going to make this the basis of everything. But then we are customized, each of us, right? Based on the obvious things, right? Gender and blah, 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 and all these other things. And then we're customized in different ways because we each have, as in my language, I would say we each have a different mission, slightly different mission, right? Depends on where we are in our spiritual evolution, depends on what we need to learn. So we are all slightly a little bit different. So referring to the previous conversation, that's why we are generically, right? We all need to breathe. We all need to laugh. We all need to cry, right? But okay, but what do I need to eat? What do you need to eat? What's the best thing for you? What's the best thing? But it's slightly different, right?
Yeah, and I explain to my clients, you're already a VIP. You're a vibrational interference pattern. So just like your fingerprint is unique to you, your energy is unique to you.
Yeah.
And how you express it. Now, Johnathan Goldman, in your book, The Gift of the Body, you talk about the divine tactics. What exactly are the divine tactics?
Well, I already referred to the three groundings, or the basis of the divine tactics. The others have to do with then from that place of heart-centeredness and light receiving is learning from what I say to students when they come, I say, put on my goggles for a little while. Just put on my goggles, right? Because we look through the world through goggles. Everybody has goggles. We have filters. So put on my filters for a little while and let's look at the human body, human energy field, the vehicle, from this particular angle. So what people then learn to is from the inside out. So I'll give you an example. Yesterday, my wife and my daughter and I were taking a hike. We happen to live in places with beautiful hikes. So we're taking a hike, and my daughter, who is an incredible healer and, you know, a very spiritual person in her own right, she says, you know, sometimes now I can see where she called it the blobs, what we were referring to as these glitches, right? She says, I can see it. And I just put my hand out and I close my eyes and I call light to that place in my field. She said, and sometimes it just dissipates and I feel we're better and much better. And the conversation we were having was, well, how come sometimes it's really easy to do and sometimes it's not? We were having this conversation. So part of the divine tactics is to become what I call the commander of your vehicle. Mm. You become the commander of your vehicle. The vehicle is a rental, but right? So who's been driving it up until now? Your ego's been driving it. Your fear's been driving it, right? For most of us, my third chakra has been driving it. Now, the commander of my vehicle is going to sit in my heart. Mm. And so I'm the commander. I'm actually the co-commander, right? In other words, I have my karma, I have many things. As you said, I'm connected to the field around me. I have all these different influences, but I'm the one now sitting in the center, in the driver's seat. And so I can do things like my daughter did of seeing where do I need work? I become my own healer. And then when I come to you or someone comes to me, we're just the helpers.
Beautiful explanation. Now, Johnathan Goldman, I'll tell our audience a story. I remember years ago working with a lady who'd had fibromyalgia for years. And her energy field, if you looked at it, if you remember the Schultz cartoon Peanuts, and they had different characters, Snoopy and Charlie Brown. Well, there was a character called Pigpen who basically walked around like in a cloud of dust. That's what her energy field looked like, was this dense cloud of energy. So, Johnathan Goldman, can you explain for our audience, when we do not resolve our emotional issues and we're walking around in this cloud of unresolved emotional trauma, depression, and anxiety, how does that affect our energy field?
Well, I think the Pigpen it simply is awesome. I think it's exactly right. Excuse me. Fibromyalgia is one of what I call mediumistic disease, right? What is it? It's exactly, you described it perfectly. There's this weight of energy, of dense, stuck, unresolved energy that just sits on the person, and eventually they're in very bad pain, right? So where does that come from? It comes from, as you're saying, unresolved emotion, but it also comes, when I say it's a mediumistic disease, it's that on top of what that person has not resolved in them, piles on resonant energy. So for instance, if what I have not resolved in me is grief, right? Many people, grief, fear, anger, right? The main ones. Trauma. I haven't resolved those in me, and that makes those densities, that makes those holding places. There are two laws in the universe. There's a law of magnetism, there's a law of resonance. Magnetism is opposites attract. Resonance is like attracts like. So that in me that is already stuck attracts from the general field the grief, the sadness, the vibration of sadness that sticks on. And so I'm all of a sudden, not all of a sudden, over time, I have a lead overcoat made up of that. So what's the answer? There are two levels. One is I have to own, as you're saying, I have to own that grief. I have to discharge it. I have to work with it how I'm going to do it, and you work with it, I work with different ways. The other is there are ways to literally pluck off the extraneous energies and just send them away. When I see clients, and what I teach people is the first 1, 2, 3, 4 sessions, where what I say is we back up the cosmic dump truck and we just shovel from the person's energy field that stuff. I'm working with a woman now, 86 years old, has terrible fibromyalgia. So she has 86 years she's gathered, and that's exactly what we're doing every session.
Beautiful explanation. And Johnathan Goldman, final thoughts for our audience. Final thought as we come to the end of this session. How can we channel more light?
First, understand light is not a metaphor. Light is not a metaphor. Just like the heart is not the heart is not a Hallmark card. The heart is absolutely your inbuilt vehicle. There is nothing missing. It's just waiting for you to uncover it. So light is real. Light is possible. Light is everywhere, but it is possible. You have 4 gifts. You have the gift of consciousness. You have the gift of your body that your consciousness resides in. You have choice, and you have the ability to actualize your choice. So using those together, you can call light to you and through you to other people. I want to leave, with your permission, I want to say one more brief thing. I had a dream last night. My dreams tell me a lot. And it's a long dream, but here's what I, in the dream, I was talking to a group of people, and I started giving a very smart thing. Nobody listened. People were just like talking. And finally, I said, you are loved. You are loved. And the love that comes, my wife was in the dream. I said, the love that comes through, not only do we love you, Jane and I love you, but that which loves through us and through all of us loves you and loves all of us.
Beautiful message. You've been listening to the Natural Healing Show for UK Health Radio. I'm your host, medical intuitive healer, Amazon #1 bestselling author. And you can find out more about me at CatherineCarrigan.com and UnlimitedEnergyNow.com. While you're there, definitely sign up for my newsletter so you can learn even more about how you can heal yourself naturally. Our guest today is Johnathan Goldman. You can read his new book, The Gift of the Body, a multidimensional guide to energy anatomy, grounded spirituality, and living through the heart, and find out more about his wonderful work at essentiallight.org. And remember that your energy field is part of you. And by keeping your energy field grounded and full of light, you can be healthy naturally. Thanks so much for listening, and we'll see you next time.